Hi, my name is Greg. I'm a solutions engineer here at Twilio Segment. Today, I'm going to give you an overview of our core product, Segment Connections, and show you how to get things set up. First, we'll take a dive into the key concepts behind Segment. Then we'll go into the product itself, showing you how data flows from source to segment to destination. Then we'll take a deeper dive, showing you how easy it is to set up various sources and destinations. Then we'll go into the more advanced features of Segment, protocols, and Engage. And finally, we'll wrap up. So let's dive right in. One of the key challenges that most modern businesses face is that they end up accumulating a number of different tools to solve various problems in their organizations. The issue is that these tools tend to not use a common data interchange format, and connecting data between tools is a mixed bag. So you end up with a situation where you have lots of tools talking to each other in a fragmented fashion, meaning that the data is not unified between these tools, and it's hard to find a single source of truth. Your business will differ in terms of the specifics, but the concepts here are generally the same. Most businesses are trying to get data from an app or a website or something like that and passing it downstream to multiple different tools, such as analytics and email marketing and customer service. You also might have server side or backend data that you need to get into different downstream tools. Because these tools are not instrumented in a uniform manner, that means that the data is inconsistent in these downstream tools, and it's hard to tell what is the single source of truth. So this is where Segment comes in. Segment Connection solves this core problem of fragmented data by employing a simplified model, which we can visualize as source to segment to destination. First, on the source side, we're aiming to collect all the sources of customer data that might be relevant to your business. So that could be things like data from your website, your mobile app data, backend server data, and even information from various apps that you might use, such as your CRM and email marketing tools. Instead of connecting these sources directly to destinations, like in the old model, now the aim is just to get that data into Segment. So we're going to pass that data into Segment using one of the many pre-built connectors or libraries that Segment has available for some of the most common programming languages. On the destination side, Segment Connections has a catalog of hundreds of destinations that you can connect to your Segment workspace. This spans from email marketing tools and analytics tools to CRMs and conversion APIs for ad networks. We even support the most common data warehouses such as Snowflake, BigQuery, and Redshift. Connecting these destinations is generally quite straightforward and easy, and I'll get to that later in this video. But for right now, I want to drive home this idea of getting rid of the fragmented data of one-to-one connections between tools and replacing it with this model of sources to segment to destinations. Next, we're going to dive into the product so I can show you a bit more about how things work under the hood. Now, on screen, I've logged into my Segment account and brought up the workspace that I want to work with today. So you can see that on the right. I've also clicked on the Connections tab, and right away, you can see the same model we've been talking about of source to segment to destination. Now, this workspace is going to look a little bit different from your workspace just because I've already gone ahead and set a bunch of things up here. Yours would be more of a blank slate, but we are going to get into how to set things up today. Right now, I just want to show you a few things in the product itself. On the left side of my screen, I have a dummy website that we've built. This was built in Next.js, and we use the library from Segment, analytics.js, to instrument the website and send data into Segment. We have libraries and SDKs for many of the common programming languages and platforms that are out there, but I'm just going to show you the JavaScript source today. What I'm going to do here is click on the JavaScript source and load the website that I want to deal with here. So this is the demo site. And on the top of the screen, I have this row of tabs. Specifically, I want to look at the debugger so I can see exactly what's going on within my website. Now, if I start interacting with this website, you'll see the events and my interactions appear in real time. So for example, let me click on this article here about reverse ETL. You can see that 2 new events came in. I'll go back to the home page and you'll see some new events come in that I've gone home. Let me put in my name to sign up for the newsletter, greg@twiliox.com, not my real email address. Submit, and you'll see the submission for the newsletter sign up show up, as well as this identify call appear. Maybe we'll do one more thing, click on an ad. Let's see what happens there. Oh, nothing loaded, but the ad clicked event came in to Segment. Keep in mind, this is a dummy website. Finally, maybe I'll log into my account or attempt to at least. So here we go. Greg at Twilio X, ABC123. Let's see what happens. Well, we got a login event and my password manager is prompting me to save the password. Now that we've interacted with our website and generated a bunch of events, I want to show you what those events look like in Segment, and also to teach you about the 3 most common event types in Segment, which are page, track, and identify. So back in the debugger page here, I'm going to first click on the page call to show you that. And specifically, I'll click on this login page call, which was when we clicked on the login page on the website. And this is the anatomy of a segment page call, the function, as well as a wrapped JSON object. So with the page call here, specifically, we have the name of the page and we have some additional properties. These can be specified by the developer. So things like the name of the page, the path, as well as referral information, and a few other bits of information that may be relevant. Segment, at least in the case of analytics.js, will automatically collect a bunch of other information, such as the context information for the user and their browser, as well as the timestamps. And you can utilize this information within Segment as well as within downstream tools later. So that was the page call. The next call that I think would be relevant is the track call. And specifically, I'll look at this article viewed track call. Click back on the Pretty tab, and you can see that the anatomy of this call is very similar to the page call. We have the name of the function, the name of the track event, as well as properties. So in this case, the track event was called article viewed. And within the properties JSON object, this is free form JSON information that you can send in, and it's totally up to you what is specified here. So in this case, we send in some information that is relevant about the article, such as the author and the category. But this could be anything that is relevant to your track events use cases, as long as it adheres to a number of limited data types. You can see that Segment also automatically captures context information and a bunch of other relevant information that may be useful down the road when you're analyzing your data. Finally, we'll get into the identify call. The identify call is meant to be used whenever a user identifies themselves. So the common examples of this would be signing up for a newsletter, creating an account, or logging into the account. So here within the debugger, I'm clicking on this identify event here, and we'll click again on the Pretty tab. You can see that this was a newsletter sign up event. So analytics.identify is the name of the function. This is the user that we are identifying. And then we can choose to send in additional traits within the JSON object here. So this one is very basic. It's just my email address as well as my opt-in status for the newsletter. But say they were creating an account or checking out on an e-commerce website. Well, maybe you want to include their address information or their opt-in consent for a certain email list. Really anything you like to do to identify the user and unify information about that person should be included within the object of the identify call. So we looked at the page call, the track call, and identify call. One other thing I'd like to note before moving on is that with the page call, this is something that is used for web apps mostly. But if you are using mobile apps, such as Android apps or iOS apps, we actually call that the screen call instead of page. But the concepts and principles are quite similar. It's just that for web, it's called page, and for mobile, it's called screen. So far, we've looked at working with a source and bringing data into Segment. Now I want to show you what happens with data as it comes out of Segment into destinations. In this case, I'm going to show you an analytics tool Mixpanel, but keep in mind that Segment works with many different destinations. And even within the analytics tool space, we don't just support Mixpanel, we support a number of other popular tools that may be more relevant for your business. It's just that in this case, I have Mixpanel set up with this workspace. So if we can see back in my workspace in connections, you can see that I have Mixpanel set up here, and it's connected to one of my JavaScript sources. Specifically, that source in this case is my blog source. So I'm going to click on that source and look at the debugger here. And you can see that it actually has people on this site right now interacting with it. On the left side, you can see the historical trends for this source. So a lot of activity over the last few days. And also on this source, people are actually creating orders for our new product. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to click on one of these events here. So let's take a look at one of these user login events and click on the raw information. I'll just zoom in a little bit more so you can see it better. And one of those pieces of information there is the user ID. So you can choose to manage your users and specify user IDs when people are interacting with their accounts. So you can make sure all of their activity is tied together in all of your downstream tools. So to give you an example of this, I'm going to copy this user ID. And I'm going to go over in the Mixpanel, and specifically, I'm looking at the user lookup page. And what I'm going to do is clear this user out and paste in the new user that I just found, and we'll add that. Okay, so it looks like this person had also sent in an identify event at some point, because we know that in Mixpanel, their name is Cassandra. So we'll click on Cassandra's activity here, and we can see that they had an identify event, and we brought in properties from Segment. But we can also look at that user's history within Mixpanel or within any other analytics tool. We can see that this specific user did a bunch of other things. And this is one of the powers of Segment, because by specifying these user IDs, you're no longer limited to just tracking user activity from one app. Now you can collect data across your website and your mobile app and some of your server side tools. And you can start trying to bring that data together. And specifying the user ID would be one way that you could see that user's activity in downstream tools to get a better understanding of what they're doing. So we can see that this user has interacted a bunch with our site, and maybe we'll just do that for one more user. So I'll back out of here and let's go grab another event randomly, and let's find one with a user ID. So for example, here we can see that this person's user ID starting with 993. And we should also be able to see additional information about this user. So their last name is Balistreri and their first name is Darrow. So let's see if that matches up within Mixpanel here. So I'll get rid of this, and I'm going to specify this 993 user ID. And here we go. Darrow Balistreri. Sorry if I've got your name wrong, Darrow. And we can see that we sent in that identify event, but this person already interacted with our site, and we've generated a bunch of other information based on the track events and page events that they have interacted with. So using Segment alongside an analytics tool, alongside a CRM, alongside email marketing and conversion APIs, this is really the power that you're starting to unlock of understanding what users are doing and working with them to be able to personalize and retarget to them so that you can maximize your marketing, your data, your engineering efforts. Now that we've seen what it's like to interact with Segment, to get data in, to interact with that data within the product, and to push it to downstream tools, I want to show you how easy it is to set up sources and destinations with Segment connections. First, we're going to set up a source in our workspace using one of the tools that are available in our catalog out of the box. And there are two ways to find out what's in our catalog. The first would be from the documentation at segment.com/docs. You can search in connections, sources, sources catalog would be the entire list of all the supported sources. Specifically in this case today, I want to look for iterable. So I'm going to search for that. And you can see that there is an iterable source showing up. The other way to find sources available in the catalog is to go into your workspace and under sources, under connections, click add source. And again, I will search for iterable, and you can see that it shows up here. So what I'm going to do is within this workspace, I'm going to click add the source. You can choose to give the source a different name than what is specified here and add labels. And you can also choose if you want to connect it to one of your warehouse destinations. So I would click add source now. And all that I have to do to finish setting up iterable as a source now is I need to take this right key and then go into the settings in iterable and paste that right key into iterable. Now iterable will know to write data to segment. And once that is working, this will change from no recent data to actually sending in data. One thing to note with out-of-the-box integrations is that the workflow for getting that integration added can differ a bit from integration to integration. So in this case, with iterable, it asked us to copy the right key and paste it into iterable. Other apps might work slightly differently. For example, there might be an authentication workflow with that app directly. But the idea is that we try to make it very easy so you can get data flowing from your sources into Segment within just a few minutes per source. Setting up out-of-the-box destinations from our catalog is equally easy. Again, you can use the documentation at segment.com/docs to look for the integration. Either go to connections and destinations catalog, or you can just search from our search page to see if that integration is available. So in this case, I'm going to search for Mixpanel, and you can see that it shows up as a destination. And specifically, I'll look at the actions destination here, which is a newer technology. You can also search the catalog directly from your Segment workspace. If you go to connections and then add destination, I'm going to again search for Mixpanel and actions, and I will click that. Now, to set up Mixpanel actions, it's quite easy, and most destinations are pretty similar to this. I'm going to click configure Mixpanel actions. I'm going to pick a pre-configured source. So let's pick a source that I haven't set up yet, such as my Shopify e-commerce store. And I will give it a name, Mixpanel Shopify. And then we have two options. If we've already set up this destination and we want to use the same settings, we can actually just copy those settings from the existing destination. But I want to show you how to set this up from the first time. So I'm going to fill in settings manually. So now what we have to do is we need to go over into Mixpanel and we need to go grab the project token and the secret key from Mixpanel. And so if I go to Chrome here, I've got my Mixpanel project settings up, and you can see in the middle of the page, I have the project token and API secret. So basically what I'm going to do is copy and paste those two pieces of information and then click enable destination and save the changes. And now what will happen is Mixpanel will automatically start receiving events as they come into Segment from the moment I press that enable destination button. What we've covered so far is connecting out-of-the-box sources and destinations to Segment. But I'd also like to show you how to set up a custom source with Segment, such as a website or a mobile app. And to do that, we're going to go back into our documentation to learn about the different source types that are available. So we can see here that for web sources, we have support for JavaScript. And for mobile apps, we have support for a number of the different common technologies. On the server side, we also have support for the most common programming languages that have been around in the last couple decades. But right now, I'm just going to look at the JavaScript source. So I will click the JavaScript button here, or I can search from the search bar for analytics.js, and this will show up. Setting up one of these custom sources is a bit more involved than setting up one of the out-of-the-box integrations, but we have designed these sources to be as easy as possible, and we're supporting you with a bunch of really informative information in our documentation. So please go to segment.com/docs if you're looking to set up one of these sources. I have the analytics.js main page here, but what I really want to look at is the quick start tutorial to show you how easy it is to get analytics.js set up on your site. So the first thing that we're going to do is follow along here. We're going to go into our segment app and connect a analytics.js source. So I'm going to click add source, and I'll just click JavaScript because it's right here. If it wasn't there, I could just search for it in the search box. I will click add source, and I can give it a name. So I'll just keep this name, but you should probably name it to be more descriptive to your website. You can also give it any custom labels. And if you have warehouses enabled in your workspace, you can choose to send data from your website or app into the warehouse. Optionally, you can also choose the website URL, and you'll want to choose whether you are storing the data in the US or one of our other supported regions. Once we've clicked add source, we are going to need to copy the script that we are given here, or just copy the right key. So we would add the segment snippet, and you can choose a minified or a non-minified segment snippet. And this will bring in the necessary functions into your JavaScript code to enable you to use segment easily. If you use this segment snippet here, you are going to have to replace the right key that is shown here in the text with the right key that is shown in the segment console. But otherwise, you could just copy this minified code and put it directly into the header of your website. What's also nice about this code snippet here is that we're automatically including the page call in the header. So that means for every page that loads on your website, we will automatically make that page call. So you don't need to do any additional tracking. Now, the next step for instrumenting your website would be to identify users whenever they are submitting an identifiable event. So this could be signing up for a newsletter, creating an account, logging in, or maybe checking out with an order if it is an e-commerce style website. And it's really easy to set up an identify call. Essentially, you're going to use this little bit of code, the analytics identify call. You can specify a user ID, and you can specify any traits you want to remember about the user, such as their first name, last name, address, email, opt-in preferences, anything that might be relevant for you to tie back to a specific user within your workspace. And then we want to set up our track calls. Track calls are any events that don't fall under the category of page views or identify events. So something like a button press might fall under the track call. The track call is, again, very simple to add to your code. Basically, you want to add this JavaScript function with the name of the event, and then any properties that you want to associate with that track call. So this person, for example, signed up for the enterprise plan, or this person bookmarked an article, and the properties for that bookmark were the name or title Snowflaw, a subtitle, and the author of the article that they bookmarked. One thing to be aware of is that Segment will automatically associate page calls and track calls with the user that you identified. So you do not need to include the user's information with the track call or the page call. You just need to include the properties that are relevant to that track event and not the user information. User information would be reserved for identify calls. Track calls are reserved for non-specific identifying events. Once you have these few basic calls set up on your website, that's really all you need to do. That data will start flowing into Segment, and you'll be able to use the debugger to make sure that your data is flowing in correctly. So we didn't actually set this one up here, But if we clicked into sources and looked at my JavaScript source for the blog, we can see this data flowing in live. So this is how you can see to make sure, are the events even coming into Segment, and is the data formatted correctly as it come in, as well as any other additional data, what is Segment capturing automatically. So that was an overview of connecting custom sources and destinations to Segment. We looked at the out-of-the-box sources and destinations available in our catalog, as well as connecting a custom source, such as a mobile app or website. What I'd like to show you now are some of the advanced features of Segment that are available in the more premium plans. With the basic free plan, what you get is a generous allowance of 1,000 visitors per month, as well as 2 sources and unlimited integrations on the destination side. So you can choose to get data from 2 websites or a website and an app. If you require more than 2 data sources, or you have more than 1,000 users visiting your site every month, we recommend looking at the team plan. The team plan switches to unlimited sources. So now you get both unlimited sources and unlimited destinations. And we have plans that allow for a higher number of users on your website each month. Going beyond the team plan is the business tier, which unlocks the most advanced features of Segment. The free plan and the team plan only include Segment connections, that core product that we demoed today. But the business tier unlocks so much more. And let me give you a preview of what that's all about. Protocols is a tool that helps you set and enforce data standards as data is passing through Segment. And it also allows you to make transformations on data as it passes through Segment. At the core of protocols is the tracking plan, a dictionary of data that allows you to set rules for which events, which data types, and which properties and traits are allowed to come into Segment in the first place. If events do not adhere to your specific rules, you can choose to either block those events or allow them and notify your engineering team. Transformations allows you to transform events as they pass through Segment. So this can save you engineering time as well as deal with different destinations that are having issues accepting certain types of data. Once you've unified customer data from all of your sources and brought it into Segment connections and enforced your data using protocols, you also have the ability to leverage Twilio Engage to understand your users at a deep level and personalize communications at scale. At its core, Engage offers a single user profile where you can see all the traits you've collected about a user and their user event history. You can generate additional insights about users. And then once you've created a deep understanding of individuals, you can also create audiences. Audiences are groups of users that meet certain criteria, such as having certain traits in their profile or having performed or not performed certain events within a time frame. When you create these audiences, they don't just live within Segment. You can syndicate a single audience to multiple downstream tools. So for example, you could create one audience in Segment and then send it to Facebook, Google, and your email marketing tool when you want to put them into a marketing workflow. Journeys take audiences a number of steps further. By engaging with users as they interact with your marketing funnels, we can effectively prevent churn, help onboard them, or put them into funnels for sales or marketing. Because Journeys interacts with all the same tools that you already have connected to Segment, this means we can truly follow users around as they interact with all the tools that they prefer to use. And that means that you can personalize your marketing at scale. If you're intrigued by the idea of protocols for data standardization, or Twilio Engage for understanding users and personalizing marketing at scale, we'd love to talk to you. Our team will get to know your use cases and your ideal business outcomes. We'll see if Segment is even a good fit in the first place. And if it is, we'll show you exactly how Segment would empower your marketing, data, and engineering workflows. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. We spent most of our time looking at Segment connections and how it can fix the fragmented data problem for your business. Segment Connections operates on a model of source to segment to destination. We showed you how that data flows into Segment and out to destinations. And we showed you how to connect the most common sources and destinations to Segment. We also showed you how you can instrument your website and your mobile app with Segment. Finally, I talked about some of the more advanced features of Segment, protocols, and Engage that are available in the business tier. If you're ready to take the next step with Segment, we'd love to talk to you about that. In the meantime, if you're still just getting Segment Connections set up, we'd love to help you out. First, you can refer back to our documentation at segment.com/docs. And if you run into any issues, please do not hesitate to email us at friends@segment.com. Thanks again for watching, and I wish you the best of success with getting Segment set up and enabling the most powerful marketing, data, and engineering use cases. Have a great day.